In this episode, we explore the fascinating world of calories, how they are measured in different foods, and the process for determining our own daily caloric needs. Join us as we discuss the origins of the 2,000 calories a day standard on food labels and whether 2,000 calories a day is right for you. I'm Professor Megan.
I'm Professor Susan, and we're your nutrition profs.
We are registered dietitians and college professors who have taught more than 10,000 students about health and nutrition. We have answered a lot of questions about nutrition over the years.
Some questions we get asked every year, and some are rarely asked, but very interesting.
We are here to share our answers to these common and uncommon nutrition questions with you.
So bring your curiosity and let's get started. Welcome to our class. Welcome, everybody. We hope you're having a great day. Today, we're going to answer some questions about the calorie. Common questions we get asked all the time. Questions like, what is a calorie? How do we measure them? And how do I know how many I need?
I get these questions frequently too. I also get asked about food labeling and calories. The most common one is, why do food labels use 2,000 calories? Is that really how much I'm supposed to eat?
For sure. That 2,000 calorie number is always really confusing for students, so we definitely need to tackle it here too. Let's start with the basics. What is a calorie?
Okay, a calorie is a unit of measurement, like ounces or pounds or gallons. But in this case, it's a unit of measurement for energy, specifically heat energy. Calories are measures of heat. The official sciencey definition is a calorie is the amount of energy in the form of heat that is required to heat 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius.
That can be so confusing. Students will say measures of heat, but then how can the label on a candy bar say it has 250 calories or a mocha frappuccino has 370? Heat seems like such an abstract thing when a candy bar is solid, something you can feel and taste.
It is a little bit hard to wrap your head around, but I usually explain it like this. There are basically 2 categories of energy. The first category is potential energy. This is energy that hasn't been used yet. Think of gas in your car. The gallons you put in your tank are available for energy, but until you start your car and start to drive, they're just potential energy.
Oh, and also like on your body, the stored fat you have is potential energy. I like to think that those extra fat pounds I'm carrying around just increase my potential.
So true. The other category of energy is called kinetic. This is the energy of motion of things like waves, electrons, objects, and people. When you decide to put your car in motion, you step on the gas pedal. This causes the fuel pump to inject the gasoline into a chamber where it combines with air. This air and gas mix and gets ignited by a spark from the spark plug and is burned up. Burning causes liquid gasoline to expand and become a gas and heat, which pushes a piston to turn the wheels of the car. And your car moves. Kinetic energy. At least that's what YouTube said.
You gotta love YouTube. Well, that totally makes sense to me. Obviously, if you drive an electric car, it works a bit differently. I mean, at least I think so. It's definitely not our area of expertise.
No.
So let's come back to something we know a little bit more about, food calories.
Right. So we eat food and digest it, absorb it, transport it, and store the nutrients in our body, especially what we call the energy nutrients. The food provides us with potential energy.
Then when our bodies need energy to complete necessary functions like breathing or heart beating or muscles moving, we ignite or burn our potential energy and convert it into kinetic energy and heat.
The leftovers are carbon dioxide and water that come out when we exhale. The amount of potential energy we use is measured in a unit called a calorie.
Exactly. At this point in class, like a third of my students are nodding understanding. A third of them will still be looking a little bit confused. And another third would be on their phones playing games or texting with their friends.
Yeah, or sleeping.
Oh, most definitely.
So just keep in mind that food calories are potential energy calories. And once we use them for bodily functions and generate heat, They're kinetic energy calories.
If the heat thing confuses you, think about your body temperature. Because of this kinetic energy we use for bodily functions, we generate body heat, which keeps our body temperature at about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, usually warmer than the air temp, unless it's summer in Texas.
That is for sure. Okay, everyone, that's a calorie. And I mentioned previously the term energy nutrients, so let's get into that a little bit.
Okay, I'll take that one. All of the dozens of nutrients we need to consume to keep our bodies functioning fall into 6 groups or classes: carbohydrates, fats, protein, vitamins, minerals, and water. Nutrition professionals slice and dice these classes into various categories based on their properties, and one of these properties is whether they provide energy in the form of calories. In this energy category are the nutrients carbohydrates, fats, and protein.
Based on chemical analysis of these nutrients, scientists have determined that both carbohydrates and protein contain about 4 calories per gram, and fats contain about 9 calories per gram.
So 1 gram of fat has more than twice as many calories as a carbohydrate or protein. Foods that contain a lot of fat are more energy dense, full of potential energy.
So to determine the number of calories in a candy bar or a Frappuccino, scientists and food manufacturers use several methods. One is to burn the food in a bomb calorimeter.
Students usually perk up here when we start talking about food and bombs.
Yes, they do. In 1881, a scientist named Berthelot invented a device where a controlled combustion or burn could take place. He called it a bomb. As we discussed with the car engine, many substances, especially those that contain hydrocarbons, can burn if oxygen is present to form water and carbon dioxide.
Okay, everybody, we're going to discuss a little bit of chemistry here, but please don't freak out or turn us off. We promise we'll make it quick and hopefully painless. All right. So hydrocarbons are substances that contain the atoms carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And guess what? The foods we eat contain hydrocarbons.
You probably know the chemical formula for water is H2O. I think most people know that. Mm-hmm. Water is not a hydrocarbon because it doesn't contain carbon. But the chemical formula for a carbohydrate is C6H12O6. So it does contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So it is a hydrocarbon. Fats and proteins also contain these 3 atoms, so they're hydrocarbons too.
So that means they can be burned, and the amount of heat or kinetic energy they generate can be measured. Berthelot used Newton's first law of thermodynamics, which says that energy is not created or destroyed in chemical processes. It just changes form, like from potential to kinetic. He theorized that he could measure the amount of heat energy created from burning a food if he captured the heat in water.
He created a device where you put a food sample of known weight into a metal holder with a small wire fuse attached. This holder is suspended in a chamber filled with water. The water temperature is measured first. Then the wire fuse is turned on, which heats the metal holder and burns the food sample. As it burns, the heat is transferred into the surrounding water. The temperature change of the water corresponds with the calorie content of the food sample. So a bomb calorimeter or calorimeter. And I don't know about you, but that's amazing. I never would have come up with something like that.
Me either. We're definitely not inventors. I mean, it's so cool to think about. That was in the 1880s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
So accurately identifying the calorie content of food, it does take a few more calculations, and the device has been modified a little bit over the years, but the basic premise is still the same. We put a diagram of one of these bomb calorimeters on our show notes, so check it out at our website, yournutritionprofs.com.
Bomb calorimetry is still used today, but it is expensive and time-consuming to calculate accurate readings. Because calorie counts are required on food packaging, the USDA maintains a Food Data Central website, which is considered the major source of food composition data in the U.S. We'll also link that in our show notes, and that's where you can find nutrition information for most foods.
If you've ever used a program like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or looked at the nutrition facts panel on a food label, the food data you see is most likely from this database.
Well, another way that is commonly used to calculate calories in foods is the 4-4-9-7 method. This is the method most food manufacturers use now to calculate the calorie content of a food to place on the nutrition facts label. It's based on the calorie content of the energy nutrients that we talked about earlier. Carbohydrate and protein with 4 calories per gram and fat with 9 calories per gram. The 7 comes from the calorie content of a gram of alcohol.
So if you know the number of grams of each of these nutrients in a serving of the food, you can do the math. The number of grams of a specific nutrient times the calories per gram of that nutrient. Do that math for each energy nutrient, add them together, and you have the total calories for that particular food.
So this would be rare, but to make the math easy on all of us, say a food contained 1 gram of carbohydrate, 1 gram of protein, and 1 gram of fat. It would have 4 plus 4 plus 9, so a total of 17 calories. If a food or beverage also contained alcohol, you'd have to add that in as well.
Right. So that works for all foods that don't contain what are called non-digestible carbohydrates, which are fiber and sugar alcohols. These pass through your system without breaking down completely, and so they're not absorbed. For foods that contain either or both of these, the calorie content is lower, somewhere between 0 and 3 calories per gram, depending on the substance.
Well, now it's getting complicated.
Yeah, really it is. Sorry. So that's a synopsis of how the calories in food are determined. But how do we figure out how many calories we should consume every day?
Such a good question, and one that is almost impossible to answer.
Of course it is. So the daily calories we consume are used for body functions, right? In an average, mostly sedentary adult, about 10% of daily calories are used for digestion, absorption, and transport of the foods we eat.
So that's things like chewing or the muscular contractions of the intestines as the food moves through.
Between 15 and 30% is used to fuel physical activity. So this includes planned physical activity like exercise bouts, as well as activities of daily living, which are things like standing or walking or cleaning your house, those kinds of things.
But most of our calories, about 60 to 80%, are used to fuel the body's basic functions. Things like breathing and heart beating, hormone and enzyme activity, organ functions, the things necessary to keep us alive.
In fact, this is really interesting. The 3 organs that use the most calories in our bodies are the liver at 27%, the brain at 19%, and skeletal muscle at 18%.
That is interesting. I love learning facts like that.
I know, me too.
So the number of daily calories a person needs is based on several individual factors. So body parameters like one's height and weight, their age, even life stage if someone is pregnant or lactating.
Activity level is also important. An athlete will require many more daily calories than a couch potato of the same height, weight, and age.
And finally, if you're trying to gain or lose weight for aesthetics or better health or athletics, those are things that you need to consider as well.
That is really a lot of factors to keep in mind. So several mathematical formulas have been developed to estimate the number of calories an individual needs based on some of these factors, but honestly, none of them are perfect.
Not perfect? That's an understatement. I actually used a few of these formulas to calculate my own calorie needs, and I got vastly different numbers ranging from as little as 1,200 calories a day to more than 1,800 calories a day.
Wow, that's a big range. 600 calorie range.
Yeah.
Wow. They can be problematic, these formulas. And it's just too hard for most of us to accurately measure daily calorie needs.
Another scientific method of measuring daily needs is called indirect calorimetry. This measures how much energy a person is using by analyzing their oxygen in and their carbon dioxide out, typically using a face mask. However, due to the cost, complexity, and the required equipment, indirect calorimetry is really not widely available for use outside of research or specialized medical settings.
So it's really hard to know exactly how many calories you need based on a formula, and most of us don't have access to indirect calorimetry. So our advice, either buy a scale and use it regularly, or just pay attention to how your clothes are fitting. Are they feeling tighter or looser?
If you're gaining weight and you don't want to, cut back a little on food consumption, especially those with high amounts of added sugars and solid fats, and increase your physical activity. If you're losing weight and you don't want to, increase your food consumption, especially those foods higher in healthier fats and lean protein.
And regardless, always keep up your physical activity if you can. It has all sorts of health benefits beyond just burning calories.
Definitely.
All right. So let's talk about the last question we often get asked about calories. Why do food labels use 2,000 calories as the standard?
Well, to explain this, we have to talk a little about the history of nutrition information on food labels. In 1990, Congress passed the Nutrition and Labeling Act, which did two things. One, it mandated nutrition labels on all packaged foods, and two, those labels must be standardized.
I mean, it sounds really crazy now, but before 1990, each state had its own rules for food packaging. Most states required at least some information, even if it was just a list of ingredients, total calories, and serving sizes.
But food manufacturers could provide the information in any format they wanted. Nothing was standardized. The info could be anywhere on the package, front, back, side, top, or bottom. It could be in any color or the same color as the rest of the package, and it didn't have to be set aside in a box. Talk about confusing for consumers.
I mean, trying to find that information was like a scavenger hunt every time you looked at a label. Is it on the top? Is it on the side? What color is it? What does it say? What order is it in? So the FDA was charged with creating a standardized labeling format that everyone would use. And this would allow consumers to easily compare the amounts of things like saturated fat or sodium and certain vitamins and minerals between similar foods.
They came up with the standards that look very similar to what we have today. There's a nutrition facts label set aside in a box, a list of ingredients in descending order by weight, and the percent daily values are listed for specific nutrients.
And the percent daily values were a new thing, and the FDA needed some sort of basis to calculate those percent daily values. So actual calorie requirements vary from person to person based on all of the factors we've already discussed. The FDA needed some kind of benchmark or average calorie consumption so that consumers could more easily compare two different foods.
To choose a number, the FDA looked at food consumption surveys, which showed that women typically consume 1,600 to 2,200 calories a day, men 2,000 to 3,000, and children 1,800 to 2,500. After averaging all of that out using some kind of magic formula,
super secret,
the FDA proposed 23,050 calories.
And the way the FDA works almost all the time is that they ask for public comment on their choices for these criteria. And so they ask for public comment on 2,350 calories a day. And they also propose some alternatives, 2,000, 2,300, and 2,400 calories instead. They got a lot of public comments.
And most of these comments said that the 2,350 calories was way too high.
Yeah, I would have said that too.
Yeah, me too. Nutrition professionals were worried that it would encourage overconsumption and not be helpful to people who consume fewer calories. It might also make foods that are higher in saturated fats and sodium appear more acceptable because the daily value number would be lower.
So the nutrition professionals voted for the 2,000 calorie number, and they argued that it matches what was already used in existing food plans. It's close to the calorie requirement for postmenopausal women, and that's the population group most prone to weight gain. And it's a reasonable round down from 2,350, and 2,000 is easier to use in math problems.
Well, the FDA agreed, and that's how we got 2,000 calories. But the FDA also wants you to know that each consumer must modify the recommendations for their personal circumstances.
So why not just put in a range of numbers and percent daily values that would be more applicable to more consumers?
Well, ranges would take up too much space on the small label, and it would be really difficult to explain.
True.
The goal of the percent daily values is to make it easier to compare two or more similar items, not to make people do calculations in the supermarket aisle just to decide what type of cookies or chips they want to buy.
So true. So the 2,000 calories is just an average number used because it makes the math easier. It's not prescriptive in the least. It does not mean that every single person needs to consume 2,000 calories a day.
Definitely not, although many people think it does.
Yeah, they do.
So, Susan, what's the bottom line on calories?
Okay. So calories, they're just a unit of measure for energy, specifically heat energy. And food calories are potential energy. Your body burns these to provide kinetic energy for body functions.
Measuring the calories in a particular food is a little complicated. You can blow it up in a bomb calorimeter, but most food manufacturers use the 4-4-9-7 method based on the known calorie content of the energy nutrients.
Determining the number of daily calories an individual needs is so complicated that it's probably best not to even try. Instead, buy a scale or pay attention to how your clothes feel and adjust your calorie intake over time to maintain your current weight or gain or lose weight based on whatever your goal is.
And finally, the 2,000 calorie recommendation on food labels is not a recommendation for the number of calories everyone should consume. It's used to be more realistic for most adults and to make math easier.
All right, so that's it for our discussion of calories. Thanks so much to all of you listeners. You guys are awesome. We hope we made this topic a little more clear and understandable.
We love hearing from you, so be sure to rate us, leave a review on Apple Podcasts if you can, and follow us on Instagram or Facebook, and anywhere you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode.
Join us next time when we'll answer the question, are food dyes safe to eat?
Class dismissed.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find the show notes and a list of sources on our website, yournutritionprofs.com.
Your homework is to follow us at Your Nutrition Profs on Instagram and to listen to our next episode. You can listen on Amazon Prime, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found. We'd appreciate it if you'd like us, write a review, subscribe, and invite your family and friends to join us too.
If you have a nutrition or health question you'd like answered, let us know. We may do a show about it. Send an email to yournutritionprofs@gmail.com or click on the Contact Us page on our website.
Thanks to Brian Pittman for creating our artwork. You can find him on Instagram at BrianPittman77. See you next time.